Hey guys, Steve here, and last time we breezed through Pokemon Blue with Alakazam. I've reevaluated my tier list and updated the graphics seen here. All run statistics can be found on this Google Doc, which can be found in the video description. My next run is going to be Butterfree. Statistically, it's quite good, having a decent special stat of 80, and a relatively middle speed stat of 70. However, the good things about the bug don't stop here. Bug isn't really a great typing, and its stab move selection is non-existent. I have plenty of fond memories recognizing Butterfree's potential, wondering if it's better to train up a Caterpie or if to start with a Metapod and switch train to Butterfree. I wasn't the only one to recognize just how good Butterfree was in the early game, as Scott's Thoughts have completed many different challenges with it as well. As always, my solo runs will be using the Gen 1 Blue version, with the Pokemon selected at random from the end of my previous video. The rules are the same except for one minor change. I will only be allowed to use one Pokemon. The other Pokemon will only be there for HM purposes and not allowed to be used in battle. No glitches or exploits except for the badge boost glitch and marowak skip, and no items used within battle. I have also added the extra rule of not using double team / minimize until the run seems hopeless. I have also made a few changes to the format to be consistent with other YouTubers who have graciously set a standard. I'll be playing the game at 4 times speed as opposed to the 2.5 times I did last time. The results will be based upon speed and how I believe the Pokemon did relatively to the entirety of the game. I will do my best, but I'll make plenty of move mistakes based on lack of exact typing and defense knowledge, as well as a learning curve for playing at 4 times speed. I'll be better over time, but please be kind and let me know of any advice you may be able to give me to speed up my runs in the future. I am writing the script after the run, but still try and guess if I am able to complete the run or not. I will still post runs that I am unable to complete even at level 100. First off, we're going to start the game by grabbing our level 5 Butterfree and replacing Bulbasaur with the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to make sure the rival has a Charizard, which I suspect could one-shot Butterfree with Fire Blast if I cannot outspeed it. I give it the nickname Not Butter as an homage to I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, the best kind of butter. I make sure to pause the game and reset Butterfree's stats to give it perfect DVs before starting. We start off a Rival 1 battle with 3 confusions and the Charmander goes down. There isn't much to tell in Viridian Forest. Confusion is a very strong move this early in the game. We make our way to Brock, the Geodude comes out, and the first confusion only does about 1/3. It ends up going down after 4 confusions, but not before hitting me with 2 tackles. I go into the Onix battle at 18 HP, which could be a bit scary. Onix surprisingly outspeeds and gets a tackle in for 6 HP, and Not Butter gets a confusion in and confuses Onix. Confused Onix hits itself, and another confusion finishes it off, giving us the Boulder Badge and further increasing my attack stat by 12.5%. We make our way to the mart and buy 10 Pokeballs for the upcoming Pidgey in Paris I'm hoping to catch, and some status healing items. Making my way through Mount Moon, I end up finding the Paris I was hoping to catch. However, it turns out 6 Pokeballs was just not enough to catch this mushroom, and I end up having to run, and it weakens me for later battles in Mount Moon. On my way through Mount Moon, I reach the fossil section. Heads for Helix and tails for Dome. I make sure to grab the Dome fossil. I know if I didn't say what I took, you'd all ask. Actually, now that I think about it, debate in the chat section if I used a real coin or not to make my decision on which fossil to take. Once we arrive in Cerulean, I decide that since Starmie is part psychic, we should fight the rival first. But before that, I need to buy some Pokeballs and settle for Sandshrew. The first Pokemon out is Pidgeotto, and it hits first with a solid quick attack for 11 HP. However, my confusion really doesn't seem to be doing much. Next is another quick attack, and it crits for 30 HP. And I find myself in dire straits. A few more quick attacks and confusions, and Not Butter falls to the bird, handing me my first reset of the run. I wish I could change up my strategy, but I don't learn Sleep Powder until level 17. So, I go for much of the same spam confusion strategy the second time through. I want to save my confusion PP for the rest of Nugget Bridge, and I start off Abra with Poison Powder and confusion it till it goes down. I start off Rattata, my newly acquired Sleep Powder, and get a miss. Rattata hits me with a tackle and a quick attack, and it isn't enough to finish me off before going down. Charmander is next, and I am still very worried about Ember, and go for another Sleep Powder, and it also misses. Luckily, Charmander goes for Leer, and the next sleep powder hits. It's a confusion later, and the Charmander goes down. After the battle, I saved, and I didn't really know why. However, it works out because during the second battle of the bridge, I run out of confusions and need to reset because Nidoran is poison type, and poison powder will not work on it, causing another reset. After obtaining the ticket, I make my way down to Misty and fight the trainers in her gym for some quick XP. I decide not to heal and go directly into the Misty battle. Staryu is a simple sleep powder and confusion until it goes down. I attempt the same strategy for Starmie, and unfortunately, I am unable to put it to sleep first. Luckily, she uses an X defend. I test out the waters with a confusion and see if I am very outmatched in this fight. I try to work out a strategy at this moment, as there's no way I can beat the Starmie when I am unable to outspeed it and do so little with my only damaging moves. I go for another sleep powder, but first I am hit with a critical hit water gun and does quite a bit more damage than I expected of such a low power move. I decide while the Starmie is asleep I should confuse it, so when it wakes up, I stand a chance of putting it back to sleep again. I chip away with a few more confusions, and when the Starmie wakes up, I decide that poison might be the answer and go for it. Unfortunately for me, the first turn after being poisoned, I am hit for another critical hit water gun. Two very lucky Starmie confusion self-hits later, I managed to take the Cascade badge without having a reset. The badge is very important, allowing me to cut to get to Surge. Next up is Rival 3, and this time I have very little surprise for Pidgeotto, in the form of Sleep Powder. After that, it's just a few confusions to bring us to Raticate. Raticate is more of the same, but it does get a quick attack off. Kadabra poses a real threat, seeing as our only attacking move is Confusion. I get it to fall asleep and opt to confuse it, knowing I will have to opt for poisoning it later, especially with my low PP for Confusion. After one Confusion, I see just how useless it is, and bringing us down to 6 PP, I need to just waste off moves and hope that Kadabra hits itself along the way with Poison to take itself out. After a ludicrous amount of teleports and confusion hits later, it does finally go down, somehow. Charmeleon is next, and I hit it with Sleep Powder and Confusion combo, and it appears to go down after a sweet critical hit. After a quick heal, we make our way to Surge's gym, and I pause the timer. The RNG here on the trash cans can really hurt a run, and I start the timer again at the start of Surge. First out is Voltorb, and it goes down to a Sleep Powder and 2 confusions. Pikachu is out next, and it also goes down to Sleep Powder and 2 confusions. Last out is Raichu, and I am outsped and hit with a massive Thunderbolt, causing me my third reset of the run. Opting for the same strategy, but with a bit better luck, Voltorb comes out, and it goes down rather easily again. Pikachu is next, and I forget to use Sleep Powder and hit it with Confusion, and it takes advantage of this situation, hits me with Thunder Wave. A few fully paralyzations later and another Confusion, the Pikachu does go down. Since I don't outspeed the Raichu anyways, I just have to hit it and chip away at it. Raichu comes out and Surge decides that being paralyzed wasn't good enough, and X speed will do the trick, and I manage to get a Sleep Powder off. Luckily for me, the Raichu stays asleep just long enough to take it out and get me the Thunder Badge, and get me a permanent 12.5% upgrade to my speed. There was nothing of note in Rock Tunnel, and the hiker with the exploding Geodudes and Graveler wasn't too difficult after putting them to sleep. After arriving in Lavender Town, I head directly south to pick up TM39. This will make battles with Psychic types much easier, as well as Pokemon with low defense. After upgrading another move to Psychic, I decide to take out Erica and all of her trainers for the XP before doing Game Corner. On to Erica, and she starts off with Victory Bell, and I start out with my newly obtained Psychic, and it goes down in a single hit. Tangela is next, and it's not really any sort of threat with its weak Constrict and Bind. 2 Psychics later, and it's taken care of. Last is Vileplume, and other than poisoning me, it's really not much of a threat, and I get the Rainbow Badge. It will allow me to use Strength, which doesn't come in handy for quite some time. Up next, I head through the Game Corner, and this will be my last run making through this trek. I recently learned that most don't consider the Marowak skip as a glitch, since you aren't actually doing anything that the game didn't intend. Other than the PP up and rare candy, there's just nothing here in the Game Corner worth getting. Anyways, Giovanni is next, and it comes out, and it goes right back in. Rhyhorn is next, and it doesn't like being outside of its Pokeball. Kangaskhan is next, and gets its licks in before it also goes down, and Giovanni is mortified at his defeat. Rival 4, as you imagine, at this point is a joke, and I don't bother healing before heading there. Pidgeotto goes right to sleep and doesn't wake up. Execute is next, and I really don't have a good method of taking this tank down easily, and other than sleep and chip away at its HP, and hope not to get seated before putting it to sleep. Gyarados is next, and it takes Psybeam like a champ, and I'm really not looking forward to facing this beast in the future. Up next is Kadabra, and it's allergic to Swift, and will get its revenge much later. Last is Charmeleon, and it doesn't like to wake up. Just like the anime, maybe Champ should have treated it better. Normally, nothing of note takes place in Ghost Tower. Let me show you the battle of the second rocket on the roof. He starts off with a level 26 Coughing, and I don't give it a second thought and hit it with a Psybeam. Next up is Drowsy, and at this point I've got the Rapid Fire A key while I'm looking ahead on my route plan for what I'm supposed to be doing afterwards. I hit him with 4 Psybeams and then get put to sleep. This is when I noticed what was happening. Unfortunately, I never wake up and it leads to reset number 4. This is when I load into the game and realize just how far it's been since I last saved. For the sake of the length of the video, I will skip ahead. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't show the rocket fight that I lost. This time the Coughing comes out and goes down just as fast as it did the first time. The Drowsy this time is hit with Sleep Powder before I finish it off with Swift instead of Psybeam. Next up, we make our way to the Cycling Road, but before then, we have a fight with one mini boss in Snorlax. Snorlax comes up and we hit it with Sleep Powder, followed by a Psychic. We followed it up with 2 more Psychics, but he does manage to get a headbutt in. We make our way through Cycling Road and through Koga's gym trainers and walk right up to the man without healing. First up is the Coughing, and it surprisingly goes down to 1 Psychic. Next up is Muck, and I overestimate how much damage Psychic is going to do, and we take a massive sludge in return. I guess we won't have enough HP to take a wheezing self-destruct now. Next up is Coughing, and it doesn't do anything, just like the first. Now comes the moment we've all been waiting for, the wheezing. Will we miss Sleep Powder? Will it outspeed? Let's find out. Miss. 1/4 chance of losing, I guess now. Nice. X attack. 1 more shot. Sleep Powder hits, and 2 Psychics later we have ourselves the Soul Badge and an additional 12.5% in defense. Not much out of the ordinary happens in the Safari Zone. We grab ourselves Surf and we make our way to Rival Fivel. Up first is his newly acquired Pidgeot. I can't believe it's not Butter, it's faster, and we managed to land a Sleep Powder and it never wakes up. Execute is up next and we miss Sleep Powder, and then we get poisoned. Then we miss another Sleep Powder, and Execute manages to set up a Reflect. I then finally managed to put it to sleep and didn't notice the Reflect and went for Swift, and then another. And then I finally realized that I should have just used Psychic and go for the special drop this whole time. After 2 Psychics, Execute wakes up and I hit it with another one to finish it off. It doesn't, and my mistake leads me to getting Leech seeded. With Poison and Seeding, I'm on a quick clock. Gyarados is next, and I put it to sleep and it decides it has insomnia by waking up immediately after. Not once, but twice! By then, all status effects are catching up to me, and I'm taken out rather easily for reset number 5. Pidgeot comes out, and it's easy enough to manage with a Sleep Powder and some Psybeams. Execute comes out next, and I hit it with a Sleep Powder and test out how much a Swift does without Reflect being out, and it still doesn't do much, and I switch back to Psychics. Gyarados comes out, and this time it chooses to cooperate to Sleep Powder, and a few Psychics later, it goes down. The scariest Pokemon is next, and Alakazam takes a well-deserved nap. And before taking a few Swifts, it does go down as well. Charizard learned from his previous experience from Champ and dodges the Sleep Powder and listened to an Ember command. Unfortunately for him, my bug is faster than his great beast and it succumbs to the sleep and goes down after a few Psychics. Giovanni is next, and he's quite trivial, but I'm going into this fight at only 56 HP. Anything could happen. Out first is Nidorino, and it goes down to our tried and true Sleep Powder and Psychic combo. Kangaskhan is next, and I've learned from last time and go for Sleep Powder first, and unfortunately miss and take a painful bite, and I'm not sure if I can take another hit, but luckily our combo does connect afterwards, and this takes us to Rhyhorn. Rhyhorn is typically a pushover, so I don't even bother with Sleep Powder and go directly for Psychic. Surprisingly, it doesn't go down, and I take a Stomp. I tank the hit and it goes down to the next attack. This brings out Nidoqueen, and there's just no room for error here. Sleep Powder misses, and I take a nasty Poison Sting for the 6th reset. But that's not all, folks. I didn't save before Giovanni, and I must go all the way back to Rival Fivel. We all know that he's not consistent, so this may not be the only reset I take before leaving Silphco. The next rival battle was the worst of them all, as a Sleep Powder misses and we take a critical hit wing attack, miss another Sleep Powder and take another wing attack, and the margin for error has gone down to a fraction. After 1 turn of sleep and 1 Psybeam, it wakes up and we miss another Sleep Powder and we go down to wing attack for reset number 7. The next attempt goes down to Gyarados, and the following one is successful. Not much to say, Sleep Powder and attack like usual. Back to Giovanni, and this time, I do in fact save. Out comes Nidorino, and this time, I just hit it with a Psychic without Sleep Powder, and it goes down as a single hit. Next up is Kangaskhan, and it cooperates this time to Sleep Powder, Psychic, and I threw a little Psybeam in there this time. Rhyhorn is next, and I didn't learn my lesson, and I guess I decided I could take a hit, and 2 Psybeams later, it goes down. Nidoqueen is next, and I have 1 single Sleep Powder left. Will it hit? Nope. But a lucky guard spec bails me out, and I probably should have just attacked it, like Rhyhorn, instead of relying on sleep. Nothing of real note happens at Pokemon Mansion, and I also decide to skip most of Blaine's gym trainers. On to Blaine, and first up is Growlithe. I outspeed and get off a Sleep Powder, and he manages to still get a Super Potion in at full HP. The next attack, and the Growlithe goes down while sleeping. Ponyta goes much of the same. Sleep Powder, Super Potion, and a few attacks later, it goes down. Rapidash, I was a little surprised to outspeed and get the Sleep Powder off, and then 3 Psychics later, and it goes down. I really wish I could say something different about Arcanine, but except for a single miss, he takes a few more Psychics and goes down just like the rest, earning us the Volcano Badge and a 12.5% boosted special, the most powerful of stats for Butterfree. I get a bit of training in at the dojo just before heading to Sabrina, and work my way to the gym leader, avoiding all the trainers along the way. Sabrina has got to be a challenge with this moveset, but this time I have Swift, so I really have no idea how it's going to go compared to my previous runs. First up is Kadabra, and we go through the same old song and dance. I miss with Sleep Powder, he disables Psychic, which I wasn't going to use anyways. Then another Sleep Powder and 2 Swifts to finish it off. Next up is Mr. Mime, and it's nice being able to take care of it quite easily with Sleep Powder and Swift. Up next is Venomoth, and because of Scott's thoughts, I really don't know what typing it is. But I tried out a Psychic, and it seems to be doing quite good damage. I think I've deduced that it's not Psychic based on how often he points that out. On to the boss fight, a level 43 Alakazam, and I am quite prepared to be outsped. It goes much worse than that. I get outsped and hit with a solid critical hit Psybeam, and miss Sleep Powder. Okay, well, it's over. Time to throw out my next shot and just cross my fingers. There's a recovery attempt, and I miss yet another Sleep Powder. I got the roll I needed, and I spoiled it. Next is Reflect, and another Sleep Powder miss. This move is 75% accurate, right? Another Reflect later, and finally, the Sleep Powder hits, and we get to chip away at the Alakazam with Swift. Or at least I thought, until one mediocre Swift later, it wakes up and my skin begins to crawl, as I have to survive another random move. I shoot my shot and take another Psybeam, become confused, and hit myself Confusion. This literally could not go worse. Thank God things go my way, and he goes for Recover. My Confusion wears off, and Sleep does take effect this time. We get 4 chips off with Swift before he wakes up again, and we have to face another RNG roll, Psywave, and it doesn't do much damage. So little, in fact, I don't even know how much damage it did. Swift finally gets the job done, and we get through Sabrina and get the Marsh Badge. I waste no time and head directly to Giovanni, and hopefully it goes smoother than Sabrina. Rhyhorn is out, and I'm pretty sure that Psychic should just knock it out. It always has in the past, but unfortunately it doesn't. But I get a lucky guard spec, and it does go down on the next attack. Dugtrio is out, and I surprisingly outspeed one of the fastest Pokemon in the game, and got a Sleep Powder and 2 Psychics to dispose of it. Nidoqueen, the cause of so much toil and heartache last time I faced it, went down to 1 Sleep and 2 Psychics combo. The Nidoking comes out, and I get a Sleep Powder miss, while it manages a Poison Sting, and poisoning me, before it goes down to Sleep Powder and Psychic combo. I know Rhydon doesn't have a good moveset, and just go for the Jugular, and skip Sleep Powder, and I'm hit with a decent stomp. But another Psychic finishes it off, and I earn the final badge, the Earth Badge, allowing me entrance to Victory Road. I wouldn't be forthright if I didn't do this next bit here. Before the next rival battle, I decide that I have a bit of time and go to Celadon to pick up vitamins with all the money I accumulated throughout the game. However, after arriving there and buying the speed vitamin, I didn't account that I would have enough EVs at this point for the vitamin not to work. So I bought 9 Carbos and was only able to use 3 of them. In a panic, because time was ticking, I sold them and decided to buy the next best thing, in calcium, and I buy 3 of those. I didn't realize it at this point, but a side effect of doing all of this so late in the game was that I wouldn't be able to buy my full restores for the Elite Four. Anyways, with my newly acquired speed, I am ready to put the rival's entire team to a snooze that they'll never wake up from. Pidgeot comes out, and I use my newly acquired Mimic to copy the agility move and get some badge boosts in for the upcoming difficult Pokemon. After a few agility setups, I finally realized that I should have been doing this against a sleeping Pidgeot first, and put it to sleep before setting up the last one. Pidgeot wakes up, and I still go for Psychic because I thought it was going to be one shot, and I was wrong. It was taken out for reset number 9. On the next attempt, I learn my lesson and start with a sleep powder, but fate decided that I must take a hit before landing the next one. I set up my agilities and then decide that I must save my psychics for the upcoming Alakazam. I could get stuck in another recovery loop. Rhyhorn is out next, and if Giovanni's almost went down in one hit, then with increased stats because of agility, Psychic should do it this time, and it does. Execute comes out, and I forget to put it to sleep and test the waters with a Psychic. It clearly does less than half, and luckily Execute doesn't manage to land a poison powder. From there, we put it to sleep, and 2 hits later, it goes down. We level up, and Gyarados is going to be a bit more difficult now. Our first sleep powder lands, and it never wakes up after that. Next up is Alakazam, and I'm not nearly as worried about outspeeding it like Sabrina, since we set up those agilities earlier. Even though we leveled up and lose our glitched extra stats, our agility boosts are still there. The strategy here is a simple one. Sleep powder and chip away with Psychic as many times as we can till it goes down. It eventually works and goes down and leads us to the last Pokemon. It's time for Charizard, and we don't want to get hit by a Fire Blast. Looks like the sleep powders all align and the rival goes down without too much of a challenge. Mostly a lot of fingers being crossed. Well, the chickens have come back to roost, and while prepping for the Elite Four, my money errors become apparent, and after selling everything I could, I was only able to buy 2 full restores. I guess we're going to have a very lucky run, or we're going to have to backtrack to get more money. Lorelee is first, and Dugong comes out. The first sleep powder hits, and it seemingly lasts forever as I'm able to get 6 psychics off to finish it. It was a bit more tanky than I expected, despite a super potion in there at some point. Cloyster is next, and I really did expect it to go down to a single psychic. It didn't even do half, and now I have to take a massive Aurora Beam and make sure to put it to sleep this time before whittling it down with 2 more psychics. Slowbro is out next, and I put it to sleep. Then, if there's anything I've learned from other YouTubers, is that I can mimic Amnesia to make the rest of the battle quite trivial. After these setup Amnesias, Slowbro goes down to 2 psychics. Jinx is out next, and I underestimate the amount of damage these badge boosts will aid me and go directly for a Psychic, and it doesn't finish off the Jinx, and an Ice Punch takes me out for reset number 10. Alright, armed with the knowledge from the first attempt, hopefully try number 2 goes a bit more smoothly. As much as I'd like to say that I learned from the first run, one thing I didn't learn was how long to hold the rapid fire A button, because I immediately start off with a Psybeam and take a massive Aurora Beam. I then miss the next sleep powder, and Dugong goes for an odd rest. 2 psychics later, and I assume that the third will finish it off, and it doesn't, and I am punished with another massive Aurora Beam, bringing me down to measly 13 for the rest of the entire battle. I am quite sure this will lead to another reset, but maybe all the sleep powders will land and get me to Bruno. Cloyster is up, and a sleep powder and 3 psychics later, it goes down. Slowbro comes out, and we go for another sleep powder and Amnesia setup before finishing it off with 2 psychics. Jinx is up, and we miss sleep powder and take an Ice Punch, and the run ends again. Jinx is slowly becoming the bane of my existence, causing Alakazam to stumble and now Butterfree. The next attempt starts off with a successful attempt at sleep powder, and 3 psychics later the Dugong goes down. Cloyster is up, and we missed our first sleep powder and take a very strong Aurora Beam, but the rest of the battle goes in our way with sleep powder and 3 more psychics. The Slowbro really doesn't go according to plan, as I start with sleep powder, but instead of mimicking the Amnesia, I test out Psychic, and it does next to nothing. I get off 3 Amnesias, and the 4x speed gets to me, and I miss the text where Slowbro wakes up, but luckily, it only goes for a growl, further increasing my stats. After a sleep powder miss, the rest of the battle goes our way, and we make our way to the scary Jinx. I take luck in our own hands, and instead of relying on sleep powder, I just go for 2 psychics, and I have to take a surprisingly weak Ice Punch in between. I don't know what to expect, but start with the patented sleep powder, and the rest of the battle goes my way. As Lorelee goes down, I decided that since I only have 2 full restores, I shouldn't heal before Bruno. But doing that, I also forget to use an elixir. As you probably expected, Bruno is relatively easy, and the Onix goes down in 1 hit. Hitmonchan goes down in 1 hit. Hitmonlee goes down in 1 hit. The next Onix survives the first hit thanks to its extra 3 levels. but instead of using a good move like Rock Throw, it just goes for Rage. Machamp usually survives a hit in a lot of other people's runs, so I don't take a chance and put it to sleep before hitting it with 3 Psybeams, saving the Psychics I do have left. Elixir only restores the PP by 10, and I've used more than 10. Agatha can be quite a nightmare without Earthquake, so I prepare for the battle with one of my 2 full restores, and I also use a rare candy just in case. As the Gengar comes out, I decide, as a first attempt, I want to see just how much Psychic will do, and typical Agatha gets to go first, and use Confuse Ray. As you expect, not Butter hits himself in Confusion. Once again, I hit myself in Confusion, and again the next turn. But thanks to some poor move choices, we finally get to hit with Psychic, and it looks to do about half. Thanks to a special drop, I'm not going to know because the next Psychic finishes it off, but not before dishing out a Nightshade on the way out. Next up is Golbat, and next down is Golbat. Not sure if the crit mattered or not. Next is Haunter, and I land a Psychic for about 2/3 damage before she finally lands a Hypnosis. Unsurprisingly, I do not wake up, but to my amazement, she does switch out to Arbok. The following turn, I again do not wake up and get hit with a super effective Acid. I survive on 5 HP, but it won't matter because it takes a whole turn to wake up, and I go down to the next Acid for reset number 12. After reviewing this next attempt, I'll just narrate it. I have no idea what I was thinking. The first Gengar comes out and we attempt to put her to sleep. It fails a Dream Eater while I miss Sleep Powder. Next turn is a failed Hypnosis into a successful Sleep Powder. With free reign to attack, I finally get to use Psychic, and I do get a special drop, but Gengar shows it's a light sleeper and wakes immediately. With the special drop, I just ignore the sleep again and go for another Psychic, and it does get to land thanks to another useless Dream Eater. Next up is Golbat, and it goes down in the same breath it came out. Next is Haunter, and I go for Psybeam. That puts it in Super Potion range thanks to a crit, and I go for another Psybeam. I guess not reading the crit, and of course, it doesn't finish it off. This is where things go sideways, and I get hit with a Confuse Ray. This causes me to hit myself 3 times in a row before switching out with Arbok. Luckily, the confusion wears off, and the Psychic puts it in Super Potion range, and the next attack finishes Arbok off. The next attack finishes Haunter off as well. The final Gengar starts off with a Toxic, and we put it to sleep. At 40 HP, we aren't long for this world if it wakes up at any point. We get a clutch special drop with the first Psychic, as we get a look at how much damage the first poison is going to hit us. We go down to 20 HP for 40. The second Psychic finishes it off, and we don't take any poison damage thanks to Gen 1. I get prepped for Lance with our last full restore in Elixir. First up is Gyarados, and it won't be a first attempt without missing a Sleep Powder, now is it? We take a powerful Hyper Beam, we put it to sleep next turn, and just spam Psychics to finish it off. Next up is Dragonair, and I know this one has agility, allowing for the rest of the battle to be made easier. The first Sleep Powder hits, and it immediately wakes up. Then another Sleep Powder misses, and the retaliatory Slam brings us to 20 HP. I finally put it to sleep for more than one turn and grab agility and start to set up. In the middle of setting up, it wakes up. We miss another Sleep Powder, get hit by a Dragon Rage, and we go down for reset number 13. The next attempt starts out a bit better, as Gyarados does go to sleep and stays asleep for 3 Psychics. I don't actually know if the next Psychic will finish it off, and don't take a chance and just put it to sleep again. The next Psychic does finish it off. The next Dragonair goes a bit smoother as we start off with Sleep Powder, steal Agility, set up 2 Agilities before it wakes up again, and then put it back to sleep, finishing it off on the next attack. The second Dragonair falls asleep and takes 2 Psybeams before it goes down. The Aerodactyl comes out, and with our improved speed, we put it to sleep, and just spam Psybeams until it gets healed, and continue spamming Psybeams until it almost goes down. I underestimate how much the last Psybeam before it wakes up will do, and luckily, it hits itself in confusion before going down. Dragonite goes smoothly, as the Sleep Powder manages to hit, and we proceed to Psychic it to death. It's utterly shocking to me that I managed to go through the entirety of the Elite Four with only 2 full restores. But this does put me in a good place for the last battle with Champ, the champion. The next battle requires quite a few attempts, and I'll be speeding through the footage until we get to the attempt where the Sleep Powder luck goes our way. Almost every attempt goes the same way. We start off by putting the Pidgeot to sleep and steal Sky Attack for Alakazam and Exeggutor. Then for Alakazam we put it to sleep and need it to stay asleep for 2 Sky Attacks. Then Rhydon we put it to sleep and whittle it down. Then Exeggutor comes out and we put it to sleep and Sky Attack it down to finish it off with a Psybeam. Then for Gyarados, again we put it to sleep and Psychic it down. Then finally, Charizard, and again we put it to sleep and Psychic it down as well. The luck of doing all of this isn't the worst, but almost all of these Pokemon can finish Butterfree in a single move, and the winning attempt doesn't come around until we hit about reset number 18. Here it is. Pidgeot comes out, and we put it to sleep successfully, then manage to steal Sky Attack and get 2 Psybeams off before it wakes up. We managed to get another Sleep Powder off and continue to Psybeam it to death. Next up is Alakazam, and it goes first, as usual, and uses a nasty Psychic that does almost half of our HP, and to make matters worse, we get hit with a special drop. I fight through the urge to immediately reset because the Sleep Powder does hit, and we manage to get a critical hit Sky Attack in to finish it off. Rhydon falls asleep and takes 1 mediocre Psybeam before waking up. The next Sleep Powder hits, and after seeing the Psybeam, I think the run is probably over, so I switch to Psychic instead. Executor is next, and we miss the next Sleep Powder. For once, Executor doesn't manage to hit me with a Hypnosis and just a 2-turn barrage. The next Sleep Powder hits, and the following Sky Attack is another crit, saving us a bit of time and possibly another 75% chance of a Sleep Powder. Gyarados is next, and it falls asleep on the first turn, and 5 Psychics later, it never wakes up and brings us to the nasty Charizard. Fire Blast can be a devastating attempt ender. Charizard comes out, and the first Sleep Powder manages to land, but that's short-lived as it wakes back up again. The next Sleep Powder lands, and this time does stay asleep long enough for 4 Psychics to make us the Pokemon champ. I keep the timer going until the player screen comes up in the final championship hall. We finish the game at level 59, with a game time of 5:13 and 18 resets. Butterfree is only my second Pokemon to complete the game with, so I don't exactly know where to stick it on the tier list. It was surely not as good as Alakazam, but I do know that it is significantly better than a lot of first form Pokemon. With this knowledge and the stats I've accumulated, I'm going to put it in the B tier. Over time, I may or may not switch some Pokemon a tier based on my experiences. Butterfree doesn't exactly struggle most of the game until the move coverage hole needs plugged up by Mimic. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the next Pokemon will be selected at random. The next Pokemon will be Porygon. If you have any suggestions for me, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. My channel is always improving, and every video I plan to bring you even better content. Keep the suggestions coming, and I look forward to bringing you another video in hopefully 2 weeks.